I'm here to show you a wonderful place.
The vaults that you see in Prime Video's Fallout show look like a dream, right? You've got all modern amenities, friendly neighbors, swanky avenues, and never-ending resources. What else can one ask for in a post-apocalyptic world? But the twist is that not all of these vault-tech bunkers are as charming as they seem. Truth be told, many of the vaults from the Fallout gaming franchise are outrageously disturbing, with some really sinister goings-on inside. In this video, we'll introduce you to the most horrifying of these vaults, and their grim realities will make your blood curl. In the Fallout TV series, the tech honchos came up with some monstrous suggestions about how to run their vaults, such as pumping psychotropic drugs into the air supplies and separating children from their parents to create an atmosphere of trauma. Don't be surprised if we tell you that these ideas are right out of actual vaults from the games. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Vault 75. This one perhaps takes the crown for being the most terrifying vault ever. Introduced in Fallout 4, Vault 75 was located right under the Malden Middle School in the Commonwealth District of Malden. It was created that way so that in case of a nuclear war, the students and their parents could quickly seek refuge inside. The actual purpose of the vault was to create a genetically refined species of babies by selective breeding, genetic alterations, and hormonal modifications. As per the original Vault Tech directives, experiments were to be done on embryos, and they were to be cultivated further to generate the best quality of babies. Once the bombs dropped in 2077, those who stepped into Vault 75 were in for a rude shock. The children were instantly separated from their parents, who were executed in an orientation ritual. The kids were made to go through intense physical and mental torture till they turned 18. Those who survived were harvested for their genes and organic samples, while the others were killed in a graduation ceremony. The handful of those who showed great intelligence but were not as physically fit were recruited to work as scientists. Vault 75 was designed to carry on Vault-Tech's sinister experiments for generations, and was only to open its doors when Vault-Tech seemed fit, long into the future. However, at some point after the bombs fell, the junior test subjects revolted with help from one of the scientists. They killed the other scientists inside and made it out to the surface, putting an end to the experiments inside. By the year 2287, the vault was taken over by the ruthless Gunners. Vault 106. This vault appears in Fallout 3 in the year 2277 and is located inside a large cave in the capital wasteland. 10 days after the doors finally shut in 2077 with inhabitants inside, an odorless psychoactive drug was released through the air vents. It was believed to be a short-term, non-lethal experiment, but the drug caused the inhabitants to experience dangerous hallucinations and turned them violent. The overseer was fully aware of the experiments, telling the security to dismiss anyone who complained of an unusual odor or a faint taste in the air. When the inhabitants turned violent, a lockdown was issued, but the security was soon overrun. Continuous pumping of this drug turned the vault dwellers into insane survivors who wielded bizarre weapons to attack the game players. At the end of the vault was a cave-like area strewn with human skeletons and a mini-nuke, suggesting the inhabitants have been trying to blast their way out of the vault. Vault 112. This bunker is the stuff of nightmares. Can you imagine the horror of being killed time and time again? Also from Fallout 3, Vault 112 is located underneath a garage and is run by the devilish scientist Stanislaus Brown. The vault had virtual reality simulators and suspended animation pods, which enabled the vault dwellers to virtually live in peaceful realities with their bodies locked up in cryostasis as part of an experiment. The Tranquility Lane was one such virtual reality where the vault dwellers could have lived on perfectly forever. However, what the inhabitants didn't realize was, once they entered these suspended animation pods, they were at the mercy of Stanislaus Brown. They could only exit when Brown would let them out of the pods. What's worse is when Brown got bored with the utopian simulated worlds, he would virtually kill each and every inhabitant, and then wipe their memories of getting killed so that he can carry on the process of killing them repeatedly just for his sadistic pleasure. The intention behind Vault 112's horrific experiments remains uncertain, whether it was created to cater to Brown's sadistic whims or to actually provide a virtual safe haven for the residents. But either way, with Brown going insane with power and turning the vault into pure hell, the experiment was a failure. Vault 81. This vault from Fallout 4 comes with an interesting story. Vault 81 was intended to be another hellhole for its inhabitants, but its fate was changed by the original overseer, Dr. Olivet. Its original purpose was to create deadly diseases in a secret area of the vault and release them through propellant nozzles into the rooms of the vault dwellers. Then the infected patients were to be given cures through the same propellant nozzles to observe their reactions. The goal of this experiment was to come up with the ultimate cure for all diseases. However, Dr. Olivet sabotaged this plan before the vault dwellers could be infected and sealed off the scientists in the secret part of the vault. Locked up, the scientists continued their experiments on mole rats and turned a Miss Nanny robot into one of their lab assistants named Curry. When the scientists died of old age, Curry managed to finish their work and develop the universal cure. However, when a lab dweller accidentally discovered the sealed-off area in 2287, he was infected by a diseased mole rat, leaving him at the mercy of one single unexpired vial of the universal cure. Vault 108. This was one bizarre vault located in the capital wasteland of 2277 in Fallout 3, one that gave the franchise so many Gary clones. Vault 108 was created with the intention of running two simultaneous experiments for a span of 38 years. The first one involved appointing an overseer with cancer who would die in about 3 years, leaving the inhabitants unsupervised. As part of the first experiment, the power supply was intended to fail in 20 years, forcing the vault dwellers to resort to a tiny amount of power backup for the remaining 18 years of the experiment. Meanwhile, the vault would have 3 times the decided amount of defensive weapons and no forms of entertainment. This inhuman experiment was to observe how the dwellers function in a sealed-off container with no lights and an excess of weapons. Meanwhile, Vault 108 came with a secret cloning chamber. The scientists, fully aware of what's to happen in the future with the power failure and the empty overseer rank, carried out their own crazy experiments of cloning humans. They cloned a certain vault dweller named Gary as many as 54 times, with each Gary becoming more and more hostile towards the non-clones, and showing increased aggression with each cloning. The cloning logs reveal that after Gary 54 attacked a scientist, they decided to dispose of some of the Gary clones to make room for more experiments. When players come across Vault 108 in the game, it is inhabited by a bunch of hostile Gary clones who can only just say their names. Vault 87. This vault went berserk with the forced evolutionary virus, the mutagen that creates supermutants. Just a year before the bombs dropped, the original experiments of Vault 87 were scrapped in favor of testing the effects of the forced evolutionary virus, or FEV, on humans. Enter Chief Scientist Wayne Merrick, who was tasked with the evolutionary experimentation program by the US government to create super soldiers for the US military. Unbeknownst to the rest of the vault dwellers, Merrick began injecting selected inhabitants with a genetically engineered FEV in order to create super soldiers, but he ended up transforming the test subjects into green beasts known as the super mutants. After being infected in the labs, both the male and female test subjects first transformed into an asexual form, with the males developing enhanced upper body strength. As part of their transformation, the test subjects grew more resilient skin within a span of 10 days. But this super soldier experiment turned out to be a failure, as all the test subjects displayed extreme aggression, with failing brain functions. While most test subjects were terminated, some managed to overrun the security and escaped onto the surface. For 2 centuries, these super mutants have been kidnapping humans from the capital wasteland and transforming them into their kind in Vault 87. They eventually ran out of the virus supply and began scouting the wasteland for more of that deadly mutagen. Vault 87 is also the birthplace of centaurs. These are grotesque abominations created by combining humans and animals and infecting them with the FEV. Vault 118. This is an unfinished vault built beneath the Cliff's Edge Hotel in the game Fallout 4 Far Harbor. Before the Great War, Vault 118 was being built with the intention of establishing a class hierarchy within a sealed space. The first class wing of the vault was to house just 10 super wealthy and privileged families, and these test subjects were attracted by building the vault near the posh Cliff's Edge Hotel. The second part of the plan was to lure in as many as 300 working-class people in the wake of the Great War and cram them into a lower-class wing. The wealthy would exercise undetermined control over the working class and could punish them through their robotic staff upon any breach of rules. However, the second wing was never completed, and hence the experiment remained incomplete. Meanwhile, the wealthy residents of the first-class wing decided to outlive the Great War by getting their brains inserted into the Robo-Brains, a creation of Dr. Riggs, one of the investors of Vault 118. Thus, when the war started and the door was sealed, Vault 118 was only inhabited by a bunch of frenzied Robo-Brains and just the human overseer. The Robo-Brains continued to live in isolation till one of them was murdered sometime in 2287, and they had to seek the assistance of an outside investigator. Vault 11. This vault, located in the Mojave wasteland of Fallout New Vegas, remains abandoned for centuries and comes with a grim past. Vault 11 was created to carry out a brutal social experiment, which was announced the moment the Great War erupted and the vault door closed. The vault dwellers had to choose one inhabitant each year who would be killed in the sacrificial chamber. Otherwise, all the other inhabitants would be incinerated. In the sacrificial chamber, the unfortunate one would be given a pre-programmed presentation on how important the sacrifice is, following which 4 robots and turrets would fire rounds at the person. This brutal practice went on for 16 years as the vault dwellers were afraid of all dying and kept sacrificing one of them each year. The truth of the matter is, if the inhabitants decided to not send anyone to die, there would have been no consequences. Instead, they would have been applauded for their decision to honor life and no one would have been killed. Meanwhile, this atmosphere of annual sacrifice led to the formation of block leaders, corruption, and manipulation within the vault, with one of these block leaders even sexually exploiting a woman. She took her revenge by gunning down every member of the block, and started a bloodshed that escalated over time and eventually obliterated most of the vault dwellers except 5. For the first time in 16 years, these remaining 5 inhabitants decided against sending one of their own to the sacrificial chamber, and realized that no one was going to get killed in retaliation. 4 of these inhabitants decided to end their lives for the past atrocities, with the 5th one remaining the only survivor of Vault 11. Vault 22. Another deadly vault in the Mojave Wasteland from Fallout New Vegas is Vault 22. If you happen to pass by it, you'll definitely chance upon the "Stay Out, Plants Kill" sign. The vault was not supposed to house human inhabitants, except for the scientists who carried out plant-related experiments to end world hunger in the pre-war era. After the Great War, the scientists supported the community inside with crops grown within this green vault. The scientists researched on enhanced crop production, pest management, and advanced fertilizers, often with donated test subjects from pre-war contractors. One such specimen was an entomopathogenic fungus, which targeted pests by infecting their bodies and then used the infected bodies to spread its spores and infect more pests. However, this fungus could target human bodies as well, and it did just that, eventually killing them. To make things worse, the fungus spread to the human corpses and reanimated their bodies, turning them into extremely aggressive green zombies called the spore carriers. Their only purpose was to infect more hosts and turn them into spore carriers. By 2096, Vault 22 was abandoned, with the fungus colonies thriving inside and the dead being turned into spore carriers. Vault 77. This vault appeared in the promotional webcomic One Man and a Crate of Puppets, ahead of Fallout 3, and also finds mention in the game. Only a single person was sealed off inside Vault 77 when the war started, with just a box full of puppets as part of an experiment. For 1.5 years, he pleaded and requested for companions, but his requests remained unanswered. It's at this point the vault dweller, referred to as the Puppet Man, chanced upon the puppets and instantly busied himself with them. He seemingly seemingly developed a multiple personality disorder, with his alternate persona being the talking Vault Boy hand puppet. One night, when the king puppet was killed, the Vault Dweller accused the Vault Boy puppet of murder, only to learn that he himself was the one to tear the king puppet apart. Fearing what the dog puppet might do, Puppet Man stepped out of Vault 77 with his Vault Boy puppet in 2079. By this time, he'd already gone insane from the 2 years of isolation, and murdered a bunch of slavers who captured him outside, thus proving that the experiment was a failure, and also grimly reminding everyone that the vaults were never meant to save anyone. Vault 92. This vault was supposed to be a musical heaven, but turned out to be a white noise hell. The world's most gifted musicians were chosen for this vault, apparently to preserve the music and culture of humanity after the Great War. But in reality, Vault-Tec wanted to create obedient soldiers by implanting subliminal combat messages into the minds of the musicians by continuously exposing them to white noise. The white noise emitters were secretly attached to the vault loudspeakers, placed in the recording studios and also in the living quarters of the musicians. It corrupted the Vault Dwellers' cognitive abilities and caused psychosis, turning them into aggressive beings. Fall began with one musician who went on a murdering spree and had to be put down with 23 gunshots. Witnessing the man's increased strength, durability, and obedience, the traits required in a super soldier, the experiment was thought to be successful. But soon, more and more musicians were turned into mindless brutes who killed half the vault's population. Eventually, when the chief scientist decided to abandon the experiment, he learned that the overseer had secretly released the white noise in an unregulated manner, which caused the mass psychosis. The vault was eventually destroyed in flood, and it became a shelter for mutated creatures such as boatflies and mirelurks. Vault 34. This vault in Fallout New Vegas is a victim of another grim social experiment run by Vault-Tec. Vault 34, located on the Mojave Wasteland, had huge spaces dedicated to recreation, including a large swimming pool, but the vault had comparatively lesser space for living quarters. The design also included an overstuffed armory with tricky locks. When overpopulation became an issue, some vault dwellers raided the armory and exited the vault with a huge collection of weapons. Subsequently, the vault doors were sealed off, and when the population reached its threshold again some years later, the vault dwellers overpowered the overseer and the security and raided the armory for self-defense. Vault 34 was damaged in the scuffle, causing radiation to leak from the reactor. Owing to malfunctioning locks, the main door couldn't be opened, thus trapping the inhabitants in the radiation-infected environment forever. By the year 2281, most of the vault dwellers turned ghouls, both feral and glowing ones, from the contamination. Vault 95. This was another sadistic vault that particularly targeted drug addicts. Vault 95 was created as a rehabilitation center for addicts. In exchange for a place in the vault, the residents had to be compliant with Vault-Tec's rehab program. Without the presence of drugs or any other chemical alternative, the former addicts appeared to recover and developed familial bonds with each other within the vault. Sound too good to be true? That's because it was. It appears that the vault also housed a secret stash of drugs. A secret Vault-Tec agent, who had been living inside as a regular resident, was to secretly open this stash of drugs in 5 years' time. This was to observe if the rehabilitation program was a success or not. As fate would have it, when the vault dwellers woke up to a huge supply of drugs the next morning, some of them immediately resumed their drug habits, leading to violence and anarchy. Those who realized it was Vault-Tec's doing managed to hold back, but not for long. What exactly happened to the vault dwellers remains uncertain, but by the year 2287, the vault was overtaken by gunners. Vault 12. Vault-Tec did a terrible thing with the inhabitants of Vault 12. This vault was built with the best amenities and the most efficient water purification systems, making it a state-of-the-art vault. But behind all the structural excellence remained a horrific lie. Vault-Tec wanted to study the effects of radiation on humans, and for that, they decided to design the Vault 12 doors in such a way that they don't close. When the bombs dropped, the local population witnessed that the other vault doors have already shut, and scrambled their way into Vault 12 as the doors could be opened. This exposed the vault environment to the radiation from outside, and over time converted the inhabitants into ghouls. However, not all ghouls turned out to be feral ones, and decided to leave the vault in a few years. Those who stayed behind created the necropolis settlement around Vault 12, which came to be known as the City of the Dead. Vault 51. This vault, located in the forest region of Appalachia in Fallout 76, did not begin with a sinister motive, but soon turned into a nightmarish one. Vault 51 was run by a Zax supercomputer and its assistant, Sergeant Robert Baker, who decided to choose an overseer with the help of elections. When that didn't work out, Baker told the supercomputer that leaders are those who step up in times of crisis like this. Baker's words inadvertently prompted the supercomputer Zax to abandon the election idea and create crisis after crisis within Vault 51 to select the perfect leader. The first test was relocating first-class citizens to crammed bunk-bedded areas, which resulted in a vault dweller bombing his way out and killing himself in the process. Zax also changed the rules of an in-house talent show in such a way that it would put the losers in the dreaded bunk beds. Zax also rigged the casino gaming machines and video games that were supposed to select an overseer, thus frustrating the regular winners and giving the usual losers a sense of superiority. And this role reversal led to an atmosphere of anarchy. Zax further altered the alarm clocks to disrupt the vault dwellers' sleep schedules and switched off the coffee machines. Zax's continual distressing experiments resulted in unrest and slaughter within the vault, and in the end, only one member remained alive, who was named the Overseer by Zax. Vault 19. Vault-Tec loved to play wicked games with the Vault Dwellers, and Vault 19 from Fallout New Vegas was no different. The purpose of Vault 19 was to separate the Dwellers in two factions based on color. The red-colored living area could be accessed by those possessing red keys, and the blue-colored living space was assigned to the blue team. These two factions had very little contact between them, and had different overseers. Now, the ulterior motive of Vault-Tec was to generate paranoia amongst each group by playing mind games to see how each group would react. Thus, the overseers would secretly release high-pitched noises from the speakers, sudden bursts of air from the vents, and even make lights blink to signal some sort of a code. All these strange happenings led the factions to believe that the vault is malfunctioning, and the other group is responsible for the doings. Panicked residents even accused the neutral doctor of drugging them. This atmosphere of uncertainty turned the red and blue teams against each other, and increased their paranoia. Creepily enough, what actually happened to the Vault 19 dwellers remains unknown, but when the vault was discovered in the year 2281, it was found abandoned. Vault 8. This vault, found in Fallout 2, is a perfect example of the control that Vault-Tec wanted to exercise over the world following the Great War. Vault 8, built as the control hub of all vault experiments, was populated with as many as 1,000 inhabitants, who were to remain unscathed during the war and come out a decade later to take over the post-apocalyptic surface world. As per the directives, the vault doors would be opened in 10 years after the Great War so that the insiders could recolonize the world outside. This information was contained in a secret file in Fallout 2 that revealed the true nature of this control vault. In the game, this revelation was to serve as a forewarning about Vault-Tec's other dark vault experiments. The residents of Vault 8 eventually built the high-tech Vault City, which runs on Vault 8's nuclear power production. Vault 68. Some more bizarre vaults constructed by the evil Vault-Tec Corporation included Vault 68 and 69. These vaults are only mentioned in the Fallout Bible and never really appear in the games. As a social experiment, Vault 68 welcomed in 1,000 inhabitants, comprising 999 male members and a single female member. Vault 69 was the inverse of this experiment and had 999 female inhabitants and just one male member.
The mission of the vaults should be important to everyone.
Marvelous verdict. So that was quite a list of terrifying vaults, and we can't really say that any one was less scary than the other. And here we thought that the vaults were built to protect humanity during the Great War. And as if the vaults from the games weren't enough, the Fallout TV series revealed the presence of more such sinister bunkers. For example, Vault 4 carried out freaky human-animal hybrid experiments, and Vault 32 and 33 were used as breeding pools. And Vault 31 had Vault-Tec employees frozen frozen in cryosleep for 200 years. So folks, which one of these vaults do you think is the worst of the lot? Please share it with us in the comment section below. And if you liked our video, please give us a shout out and watch this space for more sci-fi content. See you super soon.